I walked closer. I had to get a better look, even though I was sure of it. He looked up at me and I noticed the tears in his eyes. Please don't do it. Please don't hurt me. What? I asked. Who are you? I'm not gonna hurt you. Yes, you are. He was sobbing now. You're going to hurt me, and I don't want you to. He sat in the chair with his legs up and began rocking back and forth. It was actually pretty pathetic looking, especially since he was me, identical in every way. Listen, who are you? I was now only a few feet from my doppelganger. It was the weirdest experience yet, standing there, talking to myself. I wasn't scared, but I could be soon. Why are you... You're gonna hurt me. You're gonna hurt me. If you want to leave, you're gonna hurt me. Why are you saying this? Just calm down, alright? Let's try and figure this. And then I saw it. The David sitting down was wearing the same clothes as me, except for a small red patch on his shirt embroidered with the number 9. You're going to hurt me. You're going to hurt me. Don't. Please, you're going to hurt me. My eyes didn't leave the small number on his chest. I knew exactly what it was. The first few doors were plain and simple, but after a while they got a little more ambiguous. 7 was scratched into the wall, but by my own hands. 8 was marked in blood above the bodies of my parents. But 9, this number wasn't a person, a living person. Or still, it was on a person that looked exactly like me. David? I had to ask. Yes. You're going to hurt me. You're going to hurt me. He continued to sob and rock. He answered to David. It was me, right down to the voice. But that 9... I paced around for a few minutes while he sobbed in his chair. The room had no door, and, similarly to room 6, the door I came through was gone. For some reason I assumed that scratching would get me nowhere this time. I studied the walls and floor around the chair, sticking my head underneath and seeing if anything was below. Unfortunately, there was. Below the chair was a knife. Attached was a tag that read, "To David, from management." The feeling in my stomach as I read the tag was somewhat sinister. I wanted to throw up, and the last thing I wanted to do was remove that knife from under the chair. The other David was still sobbing uncontrollably. My mind was spinning into an attic of unanswerable questions. Who put this here, and how did they get my name? Not to mention the fact that I knelt on the cold wood floor. I also sat in that chair, sobbing in protest of being hurt by myself. It was all too much to process. The house and the management had been playing with me this whole time. My thoughts were, for some reason, turned to Peter, and whether or not he got this far. If he did, if he met a Peter Terry sobbing in this very chair, rocking back and forth, I shook those thoughts out of my head. They didn't matter. I took the knife from under the chair and immediately the other David went quiet. David, he said in my voice, what do you think you're going to do? I lifted myself from the ground and clenched the knife in my hand. I'm gonna get out of here. David was still sitting in the chair, though he was very calm now. He looked up at me with a slight grin. I couldn't tell if he was gonna laugh or strangle me. Slowly he got up from the chair and stood facing me. It was uncanny. His height and even the way he stood matched mine. I felt the rubber hilt of the knife in my hand and gripped it tighter. I don't know what I was planning on doing with it, but I had a feeling I was going to need it. Now, his voice was slightly deeper than my own. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you. And I'm going to keep you here. I didn't respond. I just lunged and tackled him to the ground. I had mounted him and looked down, knife poised and ready. He looked up at me terrified. It was like looking in a mirror. Then the hum returned, low and distant, though I still felt it deep in my body. David looked up at me as I looked down at myself. The hum was getting louder and I felt something inside of me snap. With one motion I slammed the knife into the path on the chest and ripped down. Blackness fell on the room and I was falling. The darkness around me was like nothing I'd experienced up to that point. Room 4 was dark, but it didn't come close to what was completely engulfing me. I wasn't even sure if I was falling after a while. I felt weightless, covered in dark. Then a deep sadness came over me. I felt lost, depressed, and suicidal. The sight of my parents entered my mind. I knew it wasn't real, but I had seen it, and the mind has trouble differentiating between what is real and what isn't. The sadness only deepened. I was in room 9 for what seemed like days, the final room. And that's exactly what it was. The end. NoEnd house had an end, and I had reached it. At that moment I gave up. I knew I would be in that in-between state forever, accompanied by nothing but darkness. Not even the hum was there to keep me sane. I had lost all senses. I couldn't feel myself. I couldn't hear anything. I was completely useless here. I searched for a taste in my mouth and found nothing. I felt disembodied and completely lost. I knew where I was. This was hell. Room 9 was hell. Then it happened. A light. One of those stereotypical lights at the end of the tunnel. I felt ground come up from below me, and I was standing. After a moment or two of gathering my thoughts and senses, I slowly walked toward the light. As I approached the light, it took form. It was a vertical slit down the side of an unmarked door. I slowly walked through the door and found myself back where I started. The lobby of NoEnd house. It was exactly how I left it. Still empty, still decorated with childish Halloween decorations. After everything that happened that night, I was still wary of where I was. After a few moments of normalcy, I looked around the place trying to find anything different. On the desk was a plain white envelope with my name handwritten on it. Immensely curious, yet still cautious, I mustered up the courage to open the envelope. Inside was a letter, again handwritten. David Williams, congratulations. You have made it to the end of NoEnd House. Please accept this prize as a token of great achievement. Yours forever, Management. With the letter were $500 bills. I couldn't stop laughing. I laughed for what seemed like hours. I laughed as I walked out the door. I laughed as I walked out to my car, and laughed as I drove home. I laughed as I pulled into my driveway. I laughed as I opened my front door to my house, and laughed as I saw the small 10 etched into the